back, s'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. I'm one of your hosts, Will. I'm here with this college graduate here, Mr. Fancy Pants over here with 2 degrees showing up on all of us. Yeah. Anyways, if you like our content, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Beyond Campfire. And if you want to watch our funny clips, you can find us on TikTok at Beyond the Campfire, or I think it's just at Beyond the Campfire. But and listen to us wherever you get a podcast. Obviously, you're listening to us now, so you're watching from somewhere you can get a podcast. So, what do you got for us today, Steve?
Yeah, guys, as Will said, I am Steven the Indian, and yes, we record these episodes ahead of time, but at the time of this release, I will have graduated from law school. So I won't say which law school, lest I get doxxed. Although, if some of you search through my Instagram, you probably could figure it out. But yeah, got this fancy chef-looking hat and this graduation stole. So yeah, hey, we'll see. Maybe I work as a lawyer, or maybe this takes off and me and Will do this full time. We'll see what happens. The world's a big place. A lot can happen.
You know what's gonna be really funny?
What's that?
Is if like you get your big law job, and all of a sudden the podcast takes off, and you're like, so I'm not gonna take this job, guys. This is awkward.
I know. The law firm's like, we're giving you 6 figures, and I was like, well, I'm making 7 figures as a podcast.
No, not 7.
Hey man, you never know. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's just like well, actually, I'll even say this. If I get a law job that's like $150,000 a year, and then we're making like, I don't know, 120K off of this somehow.
Yeah.
That's $30,000 less, but I would still take this over that, because I'd be like, you know what? This is presumably it's gonna be less work. It's gonna be more fun. I'm hanging out with my bro.
Exactly. And like I told the wife, I said, this I really want this to work, because to me this is the best job, at least for me being a family guy. Because me and Steven, if we're doing this, I might have to be up at the office every day, but I don't have to be up there all day. I could probably go up there. I really probably only have to be there Monday to film episodes. And then I told Steven, I said, if we get people working for us, we're going to pay these people salary. We're not going to pay them by hours, because we got Haley making reels. If Haley's got 3 podcasts she's doing and she's done with her work on Wednesday, don't come in on Thursday and Friday. If she gets done by Tuesday, don't come in on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Have a 5-day weekend. So it's gonna be funny, because Steven's gonna walk into his new law job, sit down at his new desk, got to put out his pencils and everything. Be like, all right, let's get to work. And then his phone's gonna ding. It's gonna be like me, and I'm like, hey, we just got a sponsor, and we can't be doing normal jobs now. I just sat down at my desk, Will.
I know, right?
Ugh.
Anyways, it would be mixed feelings for sure, but overall, I mean, yeah, I would much rather be doing something.
Yeah. I mean, I told my wife, I said, listen, if this thing works out, I said, I don't care what I'm doing. If I'm still in college or if I'm getting a job, I said, I'm cutting it. I'm going straight. I'm going to go jump the cliff.
There you
go.
But
anyways, what do you got for today?
We'll get into today's episode.
And what you got for us today?
We're talking about Kaspar, not Kaspar the Ghost, but a young German boy named Kaspar Hauser, which, when he was living in the 1820s and 1830s, it was not yet Germany. It was, it was more of a mix of different groups, and wasn't quite really the Holy Roman Empire anymore, which was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, but it hadn't quite developed into the Germany we know today. But you're probably wondering, who is Kaspar Hauser? Why should I care about a little German boy in 19th century Europe? What if I told you that Kaspar Hauser spent his childhood locked away in a dark room, eating nothing but bread and water until he was about 16?
So we had P. Diddy in the 19th century.
Yes, a 19th century German version of Diddy, apparently.
Yep.
So
Keeping kids locked in the basement.
there you go. Um, but yeah, Kaspar Hauser. So let's talk about him. We'll talk about the basic facts, who he said he was, his life, and at the end of it, we'll go into some of the theories. And I wasn't planning on a ChatGPT story, but if we go through the information really quickly, I'll just tell ChatGPT to make a quick story for us. But
I was traveling back in time.
yeah. So
Who are you? Where do you come from?
we've done time travel episodes before. I feel like
We did one time travel episode, and it was not what I was thinking, but it was fun.
yeah, it was actually it was a bit interesting. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I just wish we actually danced.
so we may or may not get to a ChatGPT story, but we will tell you about little German 16-year-old boy Kaspar Hauser. So on May 28th, 1828, so about, geez, how many years is that? 207? Yeah, 207 years ago. A
You
young,
said 1828?
1828,
Yeah, it'd be 207.
yeah. A young German boy, estimated to be around 16, suddenly showed up in Nuremberg, Germany, which, if that sounds familiar, that's because this is the same Nuremberg where we would later have some of the Nuremberg trials for
Oh,
uh, Nazi.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. That won't happen for another 127 years, but
Something like that, yeah.
something like that. But yeah, he was found wandering the streets,
Huh.
barely able to walk, looking very dazed, as if the sunlight was hurting his eyes and burning his skin.
Ooh.
He was walking around, people described, much like a toddler who was first learning how to walk would walk.
Hmm.
When approached, he was wearing some gray vestments with the letters KH stitched into it. And when people asked him who he was, he couldn't really talk much. He could barely even
Oh.
say who he was. He did identify himself as Casper. When people would ask him basic questions of who are you, where do you come from, uh, he couldn't really give an answer.
Hmm.
The one thing he did keep repeatedly saying is, I want to be a cavalryman as my father was. That's something he just kept saying
Huh.
over and over and over. So, Will, what are your thoughts so far? You're walking around the streets of where you live,
Yeah.
and you see a young boy walking around like this, and this is all he's saying. What would your thoughts be?
Who gave this kid alcohol? Who's this drunk little German boy?
Fair enough, yeah. I don't know if you've ever been to the city of Helen in Georgia.
No, I don't think I have.
Helen's in North Georgia. It's based off of a town in Germany.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you walk around Helen, Georgia, it kind of does feel like you're in Germany. But as I was reading this story and doing research for it, I was like, man, this is almost like walking around Helen, Georgia, and running into something like this.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, so really interesting stuff. Really interesting
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
But um, but yeah, eventually various people decided to take him in. So yeah, he even spent some time with a famous philosopher, and yeah, he did that until well, I won't get too ahead of myself, but we'll kind of break it down bit by bit. But
Who was the
basically,
philosopher?
the philosopher was a man named. Let me look through my notes. George Friedrich Dahmer.
Oh.
So, I was a philosophy minor. I feel like I probably should know who he is. If I had to guess, he was probably one of the more minor philosophers, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
he
There's
was.
people who probably know him. There's people probably who know him and are like, I know that guy.
Yeah, if there's any philosophy nerds out there that are like George Friedrich Dahmer, it's like this kid stayed with that dude. Like, yeah, it's just like
Wow.
it's just one of those kind of funny facts of history. But
Somebody's like, that's like staying at the White House.
and
And I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is.
yeah, maybe not that famous, but I mean, like if somebody told me that he stayed with, I'm trying to think of some other famous philosophers. If he had stayed with like Karl Marx or something, and that Karl Marx
Him
randomly
and
had a German boy living with him for like 3, I would have been like, oh, I was like, that's
Karl
really
Marx and this little German boy created communism.
there you go. So, um, which actually, Karl Marx, I think, was alive and living in Germany at the same time as
Was he?
this guy. Let's
I
see.
feel like Karl Marx wasn't until like the 1900s.
No, he okay, yeah. So Karl Marx was born in Germany in 1818 and
Okay.
died in 1883. So yeah, he would have
10
been
years
10
old.
when when this was happening. So
Oh,
very interesting. So I wonder if a little 10-year-old Karl Marx was walking the streets and saw this Hauser kid or not. But
that'd have been hilarious.
that would have been
Hello,
hilarious.
little German boy. My name is Karl Marx. Mama says
Maybe
I'm gonna grow up and create communism.
I doubt we'll have time for a Chat GPT story, but if we do, maybe I'll just throw in and make sure 10-year-old Karl Marx was there too.
Hey, Steven, while we're at it, you know how there's always that scenario of would you kill baby Hitler? Do we want to go ahead and kill communism before it starts?
Oh man,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm kind of like Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I'm like I'm not a fan of punishing people before they do the crime. So
Yeah. So
you know,
we need to like we need to tell that we need to go to Karl Marx and whisper in his ear. Just you wait, mother. Just you wait. All right. Give us about 10. Give us about 50 years, and we're gonna come back for you then.
you know what's hilarious? Well, or maybe it's not hilarious depending on who you ask. But when they asked Jeb Bush during the 2015 Republican primaries of whether he would kill baby Hitler or not.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they asked Jeb Bush that, and everybody else kind of gave the answer of like, no, I wouldn't kill baby Hitler.
No.
They asked Jeb Bush that, and Jeb Bush said, "Hell yeah, I'd kill baby Hitler." And I was just like Jeb.
Heck yeah, go back and kill baby Karl Marx.
And it's just like, well, shoot, if Jeb Bush is saying that, if Jeb Bush is saying that, then maybe George Bush did 9. Anyway, I'm gonna
coming back 9/11 part 2. But like I mean, I wonder not to get off topic, but I wonder what would have happened if we did kill young Karl Marx. Like what would have happened with communism?
Yeah, I mean,
because like if he didn't have the whole Communist Manifesto and the whole communist idea, then the revolution in 1917 would have happened with Russia. If Russia didn't get revolted against and they were still being run by kings and queens, what would World War II have looked like?
maybe one day you and me make a podcast called Beyond the History, where we just talk about alternate histories,
Alternate timelines.
alternate timelines. So,
oh man. Anyways,
anyway, let's get back to
Hauser.
So Kaspar Hauser had 2 letters addressed to a certain captain named von Wessing of the local cavalry regiment.
Huh.
The other letter was supposedly from a poor laborer who claimed that the boy had been raised in captivity since he was an infant and now wished to be a cavalryman like his deceased father. So that's one.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm mixing up letters. Yeah, okay, so that is one letter. It's from a poor laborer addressed to Captain von Wessing. And then the second letter was allegedly from Caspar's mom, who fleshed out his name because he was saying his name was Kaspar, but he wasn't giving a last name. But the second said his name is Kaspar Hauser, that his birthday is April 30th, 1812, and it also said that his father was a dead cavalryman.
Huh. Interesting.
This is something we didn't know until later, but later handwriting forensics suggested that both letters were written by the same hand, possibly Hauser himself, although we'll talk more about
Oh,
that in some of the theories. Um,
yeah.
but anyway, so he was brought to authorities, and again, remember this kid can only speak a few words, so
Right.
he keeps saying, "I want to be a cavalryman, as my father was." He says his name Caspar. When asked questions, he often says, "I don't know," and he would randomly shout, "Horse, horse." Kid liked horses apparently. So
He's like, is that like I don't know if that joke could get us canceled. You know that there's people that are like, oh, you're autistic, so you're into trains.
yeah,
I wonder if that's like the old version of it. You're interested in horses.
maybe man, yeah, we have horse girls, and maybe we have maybe Kaspar Hauser was a horse boy. Who knows? So
Hey, back in the day, man, it was the boys that were into horses, not the girls.
yeah, so anyway, they talked to Casper. He appeared largely ignorant of basic facts of life. When they showed him
Yeah.
a mirror, tried to grab himself. He seemed not to recognize himself. He kept staring at the sun, which obviously hurt his eyes, but he just seemed like bewildered that a thing like the sun existed.
Whoa, that thing's on fire, and it's like not burning down.
Right? He seemed to know what money was and could recite some prayers.
Huh.
Whenever people would offer him food, he would refuse all food except for bread and water. To him, apparently, everything else kind of just tasted disgusting.
Ew.
Yeah. The authorities, kind of unsure of what to do with him, first jailed him as a vagrant in Nuremberg's castle tower. A little extreme, but I mean, I guess I
Well,
don't know what else you.
well, when
And
you've
they
got a guy
go
running
ahead.
around acting like he's crazy, I mean, you kind of got to be like, well, put him in the paddy wagon.
Right. And yeah, during these first few weeks, locals visited him. He started to gradually learn how to talk more and more, and he eventually told the tale of his childhood imprisonment,
Oh,
how he had lived in a dark, tiny cell for all of his life, was fed on bread and water by a mysterious caretaker whom he never saw. He
hmm.
claimed his first human contact occurred only shortly before his release, when a stranger taught him to write his name and brought him to Nuremberg.
Ooh.
So, this legend of the child kept in a dungeon horrified and captivated the people of Nuremberg and got around town pretty quickly. So, I'll pause there for a second. Mr. Will, the cowboy,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is really, I don't know, this is bizarre because it's like, at first it's like, oh, I can't talk, I can barely walk, and then he's got these letters, and it seems like these could be written by him. So it's like, okay, and then he can't speak, and all of a sudden he's able to speak, and he's telling the stories of him being locked in P Diddy's basement. It's strange, like it's really bizarre because it's like, you know, I don't get it.
Yeah, definitely something you don't see every day,
No, no.
or in every lifetime for that matter, or really ever. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of.
Well,
I'm sure there's some incidences maybe a little bit similar to this, but definitely.
maybe, but I think like the whole can barely walk, can barely talk, kind of staring at the sun. That is pretty common nowadays, especially if you take crack or you're high. So that I can understand, but it's like the other parts are kind of like, well, what?
Yeah,
Like being locked in a basement, fat on bread and water.
yeah. Maybe this dude was smoking an early form of some kind of crack.
He's smoking Kush.
There
He got
you
some weed from Africa. Wait, no, that's probably racist.
go.
Oops.
So he, hey man, we made fun of Europeans, Catholics, all kinds of animals and whatnot. So it was only a matter of time before we came for the Africans. So
Listen, guys. All right,
anyway,
we're
let's
not
get
racist. We're not racist. We pick on everyone equally.
there. You go, man.
all people have something wrong with them that make like Steven and his deodorant.
Right. Is that a joke about me being Indian?
Yeah.
There we go. Alrighty, so moving along. So basically, the city of Nuremberg adopted this kid, with
Yeah.
citizens donating money for his care and education.
Aw.
He was placed in the household of George Friedrich Dahmer, a local school teacher and philosopher who began to teach him how to read, how to write,
Look
how
at
to
that.
act like a normal person.
So
So,
that was life.
and under Dahmer's tutelage, Hauser made rapid progress. Within a year, he learned how to write an autobiography talking about his
Wow.
alleged imprisonment. However, things were going well, things were going normal, but the story does not end there. Two strange injury incidents deepen the mystery.
Ooh.
So, on October 1829, about a year and a half after Hauser first reappeared on Society, Hauser was found bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He claimed a masked man had attacked him with a knife in Dahmer's home, and that he had growled, "He must die before leaving Nuremberg." Hauser survived the minor wound, but the incident caused a sensation. Why was someone trying to kill young Kaspar Hauser?
Yeah.
Suspicion also fell on the boy himself, because this incident occurred not long after Dahmer, the philosopher, had scolded Caspar for lying. Some wondered if Caspar hurt himself to attract sympathy or dramatize the story. So
Yeah.
that's the first incident. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what. The only people who are dramatic are girls, not boys. We aren't dramatic.
Yeah,
But
well, hey, in their defense, maybe Caspar didn't really know how to behave like a boy because he had been locked away in
living
a
in a
dark
basement. Yep.
for all his life. So,
Well, I think it's really strange because it's like if this is true, why does this person not want him to leave? You know,
yeah, it's
like
odd, right?
what's there's
We'll get
just
into the theory because the theory might explain why somebody was trying to
Mhm. So
unalive.
are these the theories on who he could truly be?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The theories are who was he?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into his life because okay, I'll just go ahead. Spoiler alert. Uh, young Casper dies pretty young,
Oh, poor
and
buddy.
we'll talk about why. But let's get to the second injury incident. So 6 months after this knife incident, we have the April 1830 pistol incident. So this is about now 2 years after.
Knives, guns. What's next? Cannon.
I know, right? So Kaspar Hauser, he leaves the home of the philosopher and he moves in with a man named Johann Bieberbeck. I know, right? Really
He was
interesting.
hanging out in P Diddy's basement. Now he's hanging out with Bieber, Justin Bieber,
Yep. So
Bieber
in
back.
in Johann Bieberbeck's home, a pistol shot went off in Casper's room on April 3rd. People ran up, and he was found with a superficial head wound. When asked, Hauser claimed that he had climbed a chair to reach some books, accidentally grabbed a pistol on the wall, caused it to discharge, and it grazed his head. Right.
What? That. Mhm.
This explanation was met with obviously skepticism, and the injury was very slight for a gunshot, but Casper also at that
Yeah.
time had recently been caught telling lies to the Beaverback family.
Oh, come on, Casper.
Mrs. Beaverback remarked that the boy had a horrendous mendacity and was very vain. It was becoming very clear that Hauser, too, was wearing out his welcome at this place as well.
Wow. So he wore out his welcome at one place, then he got shipped off to another place, and now he's wearing out his welcome there again. What the heck? Come on, Casper. Do better.
Yeah. So as time went along, there was growing doubts about Casper's honesty. Nuremberg officials kind of moved him from house to house. After staying with the Beaverback family, he then moved in with Baron von Tuscher.
Tu-
Uh,
Tusher.
something like that, who also said that Casper would tell tall tales and exaggerated his self importance. He then stayed with Lord Stanhope in 1831. He
Hmm.
eventually attracted the interest of a wealthy English nobleman named Philip Henry, who was the fourth Earl of Stanhope.
Huh.
So in late 1831, Lord Stanhope arrives in Germany, takes Caspar under his wing, and was deeply fascinated by Caspar's origin. He spent a lot of time and money investigating Caspar's background. He even took Caspar to trips to Hungary, where
Ooh.
Caspar had vague recollections that maybe might have connected him to a Hungarian family. Caspar even at one point had mentioned that a Hungarian countess was his mother. However, all these attempts led to nothing, and disappointed by the failed leads, Stanhope's faith in Caspar too began to wane.
Yeah.
In December 1831, Stanhope sent Caspar to move to the town of Ansbach, where he lived with a schoolmaster named Johann Meyer. Stanhope continued to kind of fund and upkeep Caspar and eventually promised to bring him to England, but he never did so. After early 1832, so about 4 years after Caspar first appeared,
Yeah.
Stanhope never saw Caspar in person again, though he did pay for his expenses.
Huh. This is just strange.
Yeah, it's odd.
It's very odd.
He is moving from house to house with some very wealthy and famous noblemen, so
Yeah.
not necessarily a bad life so far. Well,
Yeah.
okay, well, he's had a bad life being locked away in P. Diddy's dungeon.
Yeah.
But no, the last 4 years. All right, well, all of that brings us to 1833. So 5 years after being found, tragedy struck Kaspar Hauser in the town of Ansbach. So Caspar was living there.
Mhm.
He, with some help, published a detailed account of all the stuff that happened in 1832.
Yeah.
He was living now with von Feuerbach, and by 1833, Feuerbach, who was gravely ill, started to suspect that Caspar was a fraud, privately calling him a smart, scheming codger, a rogue. Caspar, for his part, was unhappy in Ansbach. He was working as a low level law office clerk
Yeah.
and kind of still held out hope that Stanhope would send for him at some point. But yeah,
Huh.
on December 14th, 1833, tragedy struck. Caspar staggered into the home with a deep stab wound in his chest. He claimed that a stranger had lured him to the Ansbach court garden with the promise of information, then suddenly stabbed him while handing him a small purse. Mortally injured, Caspar kept repeatedly mentioned a pencil writing as he slipped into delirium. He died 3 days later, on December 17th, 1833, at the age of 21. Before I get into the note that was found with
Wait,
Caspar,
what year? Wait, what year did that happen?
this is 1833.
Okay. All right.
Before
Yeah.
I get into the note that was found, what are your thoughts?
This is wild, man. This is like left. You're going left. You're going right. You're going up. You're going down. He's over here like first he can't walk, barely talk. Then we kind of find out that okay, maybe this is who he is, and then he has problems with families. Problems with other people, bouncing from house to house to house. Getting a cut on his forehead, accidentally shooting himself, and then you finally got a guy that's willing to go to the ends of the earth to help this guy figure out everything, and it doesn't work out. And then gets frustrated from him, and then if Casper, it makes you kind of start doubting Casper a little bit. But then, like, if Casper actually did get stabbed because he was trying to find out information, that kind of adds a little bit more. I think the word's validity to it, because it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe then Casper's speaking the truth, because if I'm willing to put my life at risk to figure out who I am, then maybe it could not be a fraud, you know?
For sure, yeah. Let's get into the note. So they found a note which was written in mirror writing, so it was written backwards.
Oh, okay.
And this very short note said this: Hauser will be able to tell you exactly how I look and where I come from. To save Hauser the effort, I will tell you myself where I come from.
Mm.
Dot dot dot. From the Bavarian border. Dot dot dot. On the river. Dot dot dot. I will even tell you the name. MLO. And that's all it said.
What the heck? Very cryptic.
Yeah, so they investigated the note and it never really definitively solved anything for them. Authorities grew suspicious that Casper had stabbed himself to generate another dramatic incident because there are inconsistencies in his story. Casper never asked about the note where, or rather, he never asked about the purse where the note was found. Odd if it came from the attacker. The note inside had spelling and grammatical errors, mostly of the same kind that Casper would make.
Mm.
Furthermore, the paper was folded in a triangle. Casper was known for folding his letters in triangles. And modern forensic analysis agreed that, yeah, the stab wound might have been self inflicted. It
Huh.
appears that he probably injured himself more seriously than intended. Obviously, I mean, he died. But
Yeah.
whether it was a murder or an accident, Casper's life ended in a bit of a mystery. He's buried in Ansbach City Cemetery, where his headstone poignantly reads in Latin, "Here lies Kaspar Hauser, riddle of his time. His birth was unknown, his death mysterious, 1833."
Huh. I could put. Ah, man, this is a head twister, man. This is like a, because it's like, you're telling me the letter could be matching the way he folds his letters, the way he does this with his letters, the way he does this, and it's like, what if this? I mean, because I mean, you'll probably get into theories, but it's a mystery. I mean, this is a toughie.
Yeah, it's definitely very odd. But if you go to Ansbach today, there's actually a memorial set up to him. So there's a statue of him um, that's set up, and I'll have to send you the picture. But it's yeah, it's kind of a sad little looking statue of him with his head down. He's holding a note and a hat behind him, and it's presumably how he looked at the time he was found.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's just a statue of that in Ansbach, Germany.
That is kind of sad.
Yeah. So, um, but yeah, man, let's get into the theories because 2 centuries later, people still debate exactly who he was and what's
Yeah.
happened. Even like we've done some modern forensic stuff, and it's told us some things, but for the most part, we still don't really know exactly what happened. Uh, but that's why we have theories, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
let's get into the theories of this kid who is called the Child of Europe. Okay, so I have how many theories do I have? I have 4 theories. No,
Okay.
5 theories.
5 theories.
Okay, all right. So let's get to them. The first one is the Royal Prince
Mm.
theory.
That's the theory I've heard the most.
Okay, so the theory is that he was the lost prince of Baden. Specifically that, yeah, the hereditary prince of the Grand Duke of Baden, and it says that close to around 1829, Caspar was the infant prince born to Grand Duke Charles of Baden and Stephanie in 1812. The prince was officially reported to have died as a baby. However, conspiracy theorists allege that he was secretly switched at birth, where the healthy baby was abducted by a conspirator, some say by his own scheming aunt, the Countess of Hochberg, nicknamed the White Lady, and replaced with a dying infant to ensure that another branch of the family would inherit the throne. That's quite the way to seize the throne if one wants to do that.
Yeah.
The kidnapped prince, the theory goes, was kept hidden in confinement for years and then released for unclear reasons. Proponents of this theory point to attempts on Casper's life as evidence that there are forces out there that wanted to silence him lest he stake a claim to the Baden succession. So he was stabbed, and if you remember years earlier, he was cut on the forehead, and it was said that he could not leave Nuremberg.
Ooh, yeah. That does add to that, man. That kind of adds to it a little bit.
Yeah, so this was a popular theory for several, really, the first century. Most scholars now said they believe it to be a silly fairy tale.
Mm.
Uh, However, a test in 1996 did say that perhaps there maybe, they said it was highly unlikely, but perhaps there was some evidence that he was related to Baden Royals.
Huh.
But again, they said it was a very, very, very small chance. So
Yeah.
for certain. But that was the most popular theory for a long time. So that's the
Yeah.
first theory.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, it can make sense. I mean, if they say that if some evidence is backing it up and saying it's very unlikely, but it's possible still.
Considering that there's two attempts on his life, and one of them was a guy growling at him, "You're not allowed to leave the city of Nuremberg." I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, there could also be a lot of other reasons why somebody was after him. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
if he's a lost prince, yeah, that would explain it too.
I could see that explaining it.
All right. The second theory is a bit of a boring one, but it to me most neatly matches the evidence. And this is what we call the fraud theory. So,
Yeah, I figured this was going to come.
yeah, the theory is that Kaspar Hauser was not an innocent victim, but rather a clever imposter, or at least a habitual liar who fabricated his backstory. I mean, he was getting to hang out with a bunch of German and British elites for the last 5
Yeah.
years of his life, right? With this story. But yeah, it basically says that Casper invented everything to gain sympathy and perhaps receive comfortable patronage. Yeah, people pointed to his own weird behavior and inconsistent evidence. He did lie on numerous occasions in both Nuremberg and Ansbach, something that
Yeah.
basically all of his caretakers said that he did. And yeah, after his death, Lord Stanhope uh, cited a bunch of reasons why he was starting to doubt his story. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the cuts and stabbing people said seems to have been self-inflicted.
Okay.
Some have suggested that his behavior fits what's called Munchausen syndrome, which is a disorder where one fakes or induces mental illness or injury for attention. So
Okay.
it's a boring theory, but it
It's
kind of
boring.
seems to match the evidence.
It seems to match. I mean, unless there's anything these other theories can tell us, because that to me that does seem like. I mean, come on. I mean, he's getting to hang out with elites. He's getting fed. He's got a roof over his head. He ain't having to do anything.
I
You
will
know.
say though, even if he was a fraud and imposter, still, where did he come from?
That's a good point.
And how does a 16-year-old know how to be that cleverly deceptive?
Uh, don't know. Unless his daddy was a con
Maybe,
man.
maybe, but I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, I'll just well, you and me will say which theories we believe at the end, but
Yeah.
from a logical standpoint, this one kind of does seem to fit. Okay, the next theory is the crazy man theory. So it's basically the idea that he wasn't necessarily lying about his past, but his past had nonetheless driven him to become psychologically insane to where he could describe everything in his past. So this view says that no, he was abused and neglected as a child. He probably was kept in a dark room for a lot of periods in his life, and that his odd behavior, such as staring blankly, his limited speech, his hyperdramatic episodes, are signs of a man that had a broken psyche and had suffered some very serious abuse.
So what I'm hearing is this theory that he has daddy issues.
Oh yeah, yeah, for
Got
sure.
daddy issues. Yeah. He's gonna start an only ankles.
All the ankles is wild. All right, so the fourth theory, these theories are going to get shorter because I kind of just talked about the most popular two.
Yeah.
The next one is the wild child theory. So locals had described him and other famous feral children, children that grew up isolated from human society, and it's basically assumed that this kid was basically raised half wild in the forest, and
Huh.
that's why he kind of preferred simple meals like just bread and water. It would explain his lack of social skills with basically everybody, and yeah, this would explain also why I don't really like this theory because it doesn't explain how it seems he had some education, so he could recite some.
Yeah.
He could
Some
recite
prayer.
prayers. He did know at least a little bit of stuff, so I don't know. But
Um,
all right, the final theory, and this one is very very wild. But the last conspiracy theory is that he was the illegitimate son of Napoleon Bonaparte.
holy, that's a big jump right there.
Yeah, and it says
Wild
that
jump.
um, yeah, the British government knew that Napoleon had a son. They captured him and kind of kept him tied away from society for a while, and yeah, that that's kind of that story. There's really not a
Huh.
whole lot there about why the British government would do this or why Napoleon would allow his son to be,
Oh,
but you know, but those were the five theories. So,
interesting.
taking all of those into account, I almost didn't mention the Napoleon one because I just like there's really
This
nothing,
one's wild. Although I will
but I
say,
thought it'd be fun to point out.
my thought. I think the Napoleon one could work
Yeah,
because if he's
bump
his
bump the
well, because if he's his illegitimate son, Napoleon might not have had a clue about it.
That's a
But
good.
if a woman's prancing around town like, "Oh yeah, I got knocked up by Napoleon," "Hey girl, I got knocked up by Napoleon," and then the French find out about it, and obviously nobody really liked Napoleon at that time. Why not go capture his son?
For sure.
Um, and
It,
that could explain. I don't know how things worked back then when it came to like, reciting prayers and memorizing prayers. But I do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think education and such were for higher elites.
yeah,
Like most common folk probably were not going to school.
for sure.
So
For
it's like if he might have been like Napoleon's son or some son of royalty, it could almost make sense because I mean that would probably make sense for the reason why he was able to recite prayer like he was, because he probably had that education.
I could see that being true. Yeah. So
But again, like I mean, but then like I think the one theory we can throw out completely is the wild child theory. That theory can just be debunked, thrown out because it could make some sense, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, why is he talking about a dark basement? Why is he, stabbing himself? Why is he reciting prayers? Why does he have an education if he was a wild person in the woods? So that theory could be thrown out. But
Yeah, a lot of
I think the most likely theory could be the con theory, just because it's kind of like, I mean, if you're a 16-year-old boy and you got nothing else going on, you would prank the town or try to, and then at some point maybe you get caught up in the lies and you're like, well, I can't reveal it now. So I don't think there's really an answer. I think like our past episodes of these mysteries, it's what do you think?
yeah. I have a little bit of a hybrid view. I think he probably was somebody at least a little bit important, but that also mostly he was a fraudster. So I think he was trying to get away from his past. He had done something really bad, and he's just trying to get away. And so his way of living was to be a con man. So he was doing that from 16 to 21. However, I feel like maybe his past caught up with him a little bit, and there were some people genuinely.
Yeah.
I think he was hurting himself at times, but I also think there was some people that also were genuinely trying to kill him too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that he couldn't have accidentally stabbed himself to the point that he dies, but I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. It's these mysteries we cover on here. Our recent few mysteries we've had. I mean, there's no telling with this one.
Yeah,
Because it's like there's evidence that could say he very unlikely, but possible. There's a slim chance he could be kin to this royalty. But then it's like, well, he could be a con man. So if you go off the con man theory, well, then explain to me who he was before, where'd he come from? Because I've got a kid, and I'm not going to let him go wander into some random town at 16 years old and start, you know, false preaching on the church doorstep.
exactly. Yeah,
And so it's like, so wherever his parents, who were his parents, where'd he come from? You know?
it's all very odd. But yeah, man, that'll do it. That's all I
Yeah.
have. So
Well, I think this is going to be up there with Roanoke, up there with the Mary Celeste. I don't think we're ever going to get an answer
I agree
unless some evidence comes out.
for sure. Because I mean, we've done some modern forensics. We have clothes with DNA on it, and they've run tests, and we've never been able to figure out anything conclusive. So
Well, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, follow us, whatever you do. We're here. We're not going anywhere. Tune in next week. We got a bunch of episodes coming out, guys. Don't worry. The reels will be back soon. We promise. And soon we will have out those episodes for Stephen's 13 Ghosts and then my investigation in St. Augustine, Florida. Thank you guys again for watching and for listening. We appreciate you guys. And don't con people. It's not cool.